All right, today we're talking about two different ways that a Sunday morning church service should be just like a funeral. I'm not sure if you'll agree or not, but I hope you stick around and hear what I have to say. Thanks for being with us here at the Better Sundays podcast at reachkeep.com. Welcome to the Better Sundays podcast, focused, practical, and usable advice for church leaders looking to reach new young families and impact their community. Howdy, Mike Holmes here, and we are talking about why your church should look like a funeral. Now, this is a little bit different approach, but I want to share with you just something I think that's very important. Every one of us in our church services, in our career, have taken time to do funeral services for the folks that we love. And those are always very, very special services in so many ways. And I want to kind of draw a couple comparisons to kind of talk about how, like, a Sunday morning church service should take on some of the characteristics that we have at a funeral. Now, again, you may not agree with some of this, but maybe not the somberness and the crying and, all that type of stuff, but there are several things that we want to talk about. Funerals are, again, very, very special services, and they're very unique, and we believe that one of the things, and that I'll get to the two here in just a second, but one of the things that's very important is a funeral is like kind of pardon the pun, but it's like a once-in-a-lifetime event. I mean, it is a big thing, and we believe church should be a big thing, and Sunday morning services should be like a big event. And so I wrote some notes here, and I want to kind of go through a couple of these things. The very first one is that the presence of unchurched people is very obvious. In other words, when you do a funeral service, at least when we do them, we have a lot of people come that are unchurched. I mean, they don't come. They're never in here. In fact, some of them think the building's going to fall down on them. Some of them come from multiple denominations. We are in Mormon country, so it's sometimes the only time we get Mormon or LDS people into our buildings. But it is very clear when we're planning the service, when we're getting ready, that there's going to be a high percentage of people who are not like sort of ready for church or used to church, we'll put it that way. And we think that that's a healthy characteristic. Now, there's a big debate whether the local church, church services should have, unchurched people and appeal to unchurched people. And let me just say it this way. We believe that the church is for the community. In other words, we need to reach our community. So church services are for the community, for the unsaved. They're for people to come. And we believe that in many cases, services, if you call them that in the book of Acts, there was all sorts of people that were non-church type people that were involved at Pentecost. That's how so many of them came to know the Lord. So we make no apology about having unchurched people in our services. In fact, recently at a service we had a song that they sang was kind of a sort of a complicated older hymn. It's called "And Can It Be That I Should Gain." You're probably familiar with that song. It's kind of sort of goes up and down, and it's kind of a little bit different. And I was kind of in the back, and I noticed that it wasn't being sung very well, and I realized there's probably in our service there was a small percentage. In fact, I kind of started counting heads. How many people probably familiar with that song had ever heard it before? Because we have a tendency to reach out to brand new people. We have unsaved people in our service. We had several of them in our service here today. We had unsaved people. I had a Bible study the other day, and probably more than a fourth, probably 30% of the people in the Bible study don't know the Lord. I mean, they're just not there. When you do a funeral service, one of the things that's very open and obvious is that there's people there that are lost. There's people that don't know the gospel. There's people that don't know their way through the Bible and a lot of those things. And we think that that is a good characteristic, in a sense, for a Sunday morning service also. Be aware. And if you're a leadership person, be aware that there are people there that just don't know. Now, if you're not reaching a lot of unsaved people, hang out with us here and listen to some of our stuff, or maybe get involved. Give me a holler, and we can talk about how to get some people into your church. If you're wanting to have unsaved people at your Bible studies and church services and all that, we can show you how to do that. But a funeral service has a high amount of people that are not gospel oriented, don't know the hymns, don't know the verses, don't know all those things. And so because of that, I think there's a few things that we usually do at a funeral. We probably, at least we would do, keep ritualistic type of things to a minimal. I was at a Catholic funeral not all that long ago, and there was no announcements about this. All of a sudden, everybody started quoting, the Lord's Prayer, or saying, one of their things that they do. All of a sudden, everyone was kneeling. It's like, do I kneel? Do I not kneel? I didn't know. The rituals were ripe and flourishing. And in our churches, we think that we need to keep those things to a minimal, especially on a Sunday morning service, because we're going to be having a lot of folks that are not churched people. I wrote down a couple other things here. Anything that's kind of complex, the type of memory stuff, or things that are unfamiliar to normal people. Many times in churches, you have no idea, who's who and who's where. We think introductions are in just a few moments. We're going to stand and sing. That's how you would do that. In just a few moments, Pastor Smith is going to come and read the obituary or whatever. Then people go, oh, that's who the pastor is. They kind of figure those things out. So we want to be aware that there are a lot of people that don't know who's who. They don't know what's going on. They don't know the flow and all of that kind of stuff. And we think it is healthy to have a group of people in your church that are brand new, because that's what we're called to do, is to give them the gospel and to reach out. So an unchurched service the funeral is like a service in that there is a high amount of unchurched people. And that kind of brings us, sort of slides us into the next thing, is that we're aware of things that would be awkward. One of the things with a funeral service, at least the way we do them, is we have met with the family ahead of time. We have talked with all the key players. We have places for them to sit. We know when they're coming in. We, got a lot of things. And there's been a lot of forethought. There's been a lot of planning. And we believe, as I mentioned at the beginning, that just as a funeral is an event, that Sunday morning is an event, and it is worthy of being well planned out and well organized and meeting ahead so everyone knows what's going on. It has a smooth flow to it. I know if you go to a funeral at our church, they have little Kleenex boxes over here and little special places for the seating, and the ushers are just really on top of it, and they're making sure everybody gets where they need to be at the right time and all that. The sound system has been tested 2 or 3 times. Oftentimes we've shown a video of the deceased, and kind of one of those memory type videos. That's all been gone through ahead of time, and it's perfect. That's the way Sunday morning needs to be. Sunday morning needs to be perfect. Now, some of the other services can be a little bit more casual, but folks, if we're going to reach people, if we're going to reach new young families, brand new people, you're going to have unchurched people in your building, and you want to be what we call awkward aware. You want to make sure that there's nothing that's going to be an awkward thing for them. There's good introductions. Everybody knows what's going on, and that will make things run so much smoother. Our funeral services here go very smooth. Sunday morning church goes very smooth. You need to make sure that your church service is like a funeral in that regard, okay? That those aspects of it, the idea that you're not loaded with, rituals and, that unchurched people are going to be there, and you want to welcome them and talk to them, and bathrooms are over here, and here's the timing, and here's what's going to happen next, and all that kind of stuff. And then you want to make sure that it is organized and well thought out and treated as an event. So those are a couple tips that I learned from why a funeral, gives us a couple lessons on how to run a Sunday morning service. And I hope that's helpful for you. If this kind of stuff is good for you, hit the share button there, hit the thumbs up button, pass this on to someone else, subscribe. We appreciate that very much. And we will be here to help you to reach those unsaved people. So if you got any questions, you can reach me at info@reachkeep.com. And we are here to do everything we can to help your local church create flourishing believers. So thanks for being with us here today at the Better Sundays podcast at reachkeep.com.